I would invite you to leave your name in the chat box in the bottom right corner so that folks can see who's been on the line. And if you have questions, that's another great spot to leave your questions for everyone, is in the bottom right corner, and we'll be able to make sure we highlight those questions. I wanted to take a second to share with you who our presenters will be. First off, big thank you to Kate Burns-Gallagher. She's the Economic Development Coordinator with Elgin County, who will be introducing the speakers today and who will be moderating the session. So thank you, Kate, for joining us. I will turn it over to you to introduce the speakers and to kick things off. Thanks very much, Kate.
Unmute. There we go. I got my unmute working. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. As Ryan said, my name is Kate Burns-Gallagher, and I'm the Economic Development Coordinator for Ogden County. I'll be moderating the session today, so if you have questions, if you pop them up in the group chat, I'll be keeping an eye on it there and bringing them up for our speakers, as well as Ryan said, chime in at any time. I've had the extreme pleasure of being the Economic Development Coordinator for Ogden County for 11 years, and I have relished every moment of getting to work with local businesses. And one of those local businesses has been the Ogden Innovation Center, and Jack Baribeau, who will be speaking today. It's so great to work with visionaries like Jack, who see a vacant building and see beyond that and see the potential and the future of that vacant building. So that's why I love economic development and what we do, is because we get to work with great people like Jack and all the other speakers here today. So I'm constantly inspired by our business communities, and the people who are speaking today are inspirations in and of themselves. We'll be hearing from 4 leaders in our communities, champions and revitalizers. All 3 of these projects are examples of people, organizations, and communities coming together to reimagine, repurpose, and reinvent underused or vacant spaces. We'll be starting up with Jack Baribeau from the Ogden Innovation Center in Elmer, showing us a great example of the renaissance of the tobacco belt through an industrial incubator. Second, we'll have Mike Farrell of the Prince Edward County Food Hub talking about a story of community engagement. So creative repurposing to save a community asset while creating new value-added programming and amenities in the community. And last but most certainly not least, we'll have Peter Miller and Carla Leone from the United Church of Canada talking about re-examining and also remembering the role of churches play in our community. So we'll start with Jack, then we'll go to Mike and Peter and Carla, and after that, we'll have open discussion from there. So I will leave it off to Jack.
So you can hear me okay?
Yep, Jack, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay.
I can hear you too.
Okay, so Ryan, if you can show the next slide, which is the overview photo. And I do want to thank everybody. There'll be lots of thank yous going on here. It's quite an interesting story. So that's the 1 million square foot old Imperial tobacco plant. I don't know if my mouse, if you go back, I don't know, yeah. So imagine 1 million square feet, and I kept driving by it on the way. I had 5 kids playing hockey. Driving to the arena, I would see this place up for sale and just wonder, what would you do with a 1 million square foot building? So I pulled a few friends together and we went for the tour, and I basically said, don't let the money be the deal killer, just be creative, imaginative. What would we do with it if they gave it to us for free? So we brainstormed on how we could break it into smaller pieces and help create jobs for the community. We went back met with the Imperial Tobacco reps, and I said, it's probably costing you about $1.5 million a year for it sitting here empty. Why don't you just give it to us and we'll break it into small pieces and create jobs for the community? So they kind of laughed, kicked us out. He said, sorry. But a month later, he called me back. He said, you know, we can't give it to you for free, but we're intrigued with your vision. We'd like to meet again. So at that meeting, they threw in more property, added another building across the street, lowered their price, and said, what do you think? So we had to think about it, and I talked to my wife, and I warned her we could lose everything we own and have to live under a bridge. But we built the hockey arena in Dorchester, and they were building a new bridge. So I knew the staff, and they could plant the trees, proper spacing for the hammock. So we would have really nice views of the river, and I showed her where we would have the hammocks, and she said, okay, let's go for it. So it was a big step. It was definitely a risky thing to do. But I'll take you down to another slide or two. So we started, there was 5 security guards there working when we took over the building, and it was empty. It was clean, it was in good shape. And then what we have today is, it's about half full. There's over 400 people working there. And that's a picture of one of the buildings, just to give you a feel for the size of. We'll go through a few more of those type of pictures. So some of the, what Ryan has asked me about, this really was a step of faith. It was, the business plan wasn't a solid plan. We just had a vision, believed it was something we were being led to do, and that it would help restore jobs for the community. The other option was they ripped down the building, and maybe 10 or 15 years later, something, it slowly gets restored. So there was so much value that we saw in that building, we just, we had to go for it. So some of the I guess the tips that we can share to help small businesses, because pretty much every business that came to the building were small startups. A couple were established, but with the economy moving the way it was, this is getting, I think it was about 9 years ago when we took possession of it. So we worked on different formulas, working with Kate and the Elgin Economic Development. We were able to help identify grants that could be available or loans for startup companies. We put a questionnaire together to help make it easier. At one time, there was over 20 grants available. So we were able to go through a checklist for the different clients and help them focus on which ones they're most likely to be successful with. So that was a big help. Fit up costs. The startup stage of any business is always the toughest. Financially, they're most stressed, and we've been able to help work on reducing fit up costs, taking a lot of that with the landlord, and then we would amortize that over the length of the lease. So it's helped reduce rent in their first years, take the amount that they didn't pay, spread it out over the following 5 years, and it's really helped businesses with their cash flow, and we still get our return on investment, which is part of the formula for sure. You see this big area that's on the screen now is a flex space, we call it. So some of the companies, as they're growing, if you give them the vision of how they can get bigger, and we let them use it when they need it. We do monthly checks on the grid of the steel columns you see vertically, and we charge them for the space they're using. If they don't use it, they don't pay for it. So it's given them a lot of the ability to vision how they could grow, how they could get bigger without having the overhead costs dropped on them all at once. Just thinking what else I got here. This was my first webinar, so I'm still learning learning some of the technology. I think another key ingredient is working with municipal governments, working with people in development, staff, and building a relationship. At one time, there was a boundary that went through the building. Part of the building was in Aylmer, part was in Malahide. So we would work with two different building departments. So we just get together, have roundtables, and say, okay, here's the vision, here's some of the issues, how do we work together to make this happen? And if you have that collaborative, cooperative foundation from the beginning, there's things that nobody had done before. So it was a learning experience for all of us. We had to learn how to do it, how to work together and make it happen. Building codes are always fun, if that's quite the right term, but having a construction background was an asset for me to be able to understand the codes, work with the building officials, say, okay, we understand the principle, can we deal with that issue this way? And generally they were very cooperative, where they'd say, okay, there still leaves this problem. How are we going to address that? So keeping that working communication with the municipality, with county, province is really important. Another thing that helped in the early stages is we would do quarterly. So every month or every 3 months, we would have a lunch and learn with the new tenants, bring people in that were experts in certain areas. They provide the lunch, people come and help develop their health and safety policies, different regulations, help them understand them better, and it also helped develop the synergy between the tenants. They get to know each other better. Problems come up, they can share their problems, they can work together to solve problems. We've had early stages, 2 tenants that were competitors, we didn't even have a wall between them. And one, gee, my forklift broke down. Okay, I'll be right over. And they came with their forklift, helped them unload whatever had to be unloaded. They worked together for a lot of years, and building that community environment is a big part of the success that we're enjoying. So I think I'll just go through some of the photos. I'll give you a quick overview on that, and then I can pass it on to the next speaker. So that's a automated robotic welder that one of our companies, they started probably at 10,000 square feet. Now they're up around 120,000 and looking to expand. That's another view of the inside. They make automotive shipping racks. So it's just a massive operation now. And they've been tested on companies setting really tough deadlines to prove that they can do what they say they can do, and they work with their neighbor in the same industry, and they combined and met the deadlines and landed big contracts with Toyota and Ford and General Motors. Yeah, it's a nice story. Been great people to work with. Next one. So this is a fabric and textiles. So it's a commercial fabric operation. They have laser cutting machines that can stack 10, 12, 14 layers of the same fabric. The laser cutter cuts it and it goes to the sewing areas that they produce it. So next, yeah, just some view of, that's a 30,000 square foot operation. We had actually bought the original building from them. That was 7,000 square feet. Brought them here at 30,000 square feet. Their production more than doubled, with almost tripled, I believe he told me, with same staff costs. So just having the operation property laid out. This is they make tracks. It's an automated machine to move trailers. So they can just hand drive, pick up big trailers, park them in very tight situations, and they're exploding as well. They start small and before long they double. This is a CNC machine. The plastic you see in the front, they cut those parts that go on the automotive racks to protect automotive parts when they're being shipped. So they customize whatever shape is needed by their clients in the building. Another welding operation. I think next slide will show, this is the son of one of the owners of this business, built this Eiffel Tower replica. So that we've had to put in overhead cranes for them. This is, we did an administration side and then their production side. And that's just a really cool thing that they're able to do with their laser cutters. And I think the son was 14 years old when he did it. This is a massive laser cutting machine. So those horizontal lines at the top, automatically there's steel stacked in there. They bring it out, it drops into the cutter. The cutter does all the cutting, and then it pulls the sheet out and brings another sheet in. So it'll work all weekend with minimal oversight. And they come back and they've got all the steel cut and ready to go. Next one. This is the production end of Planet Shrimp. I was hoping to get a picture of the actual tanks. Like, they're 15 feet wide, the length of a football field. There's 6 on top of each other, and there's 4 of those rows. This is just the process end. When the shrimp come out of the tanks, they come down the white pipe on the left side of the picture. They land, they go from 28-degree water to 3-degree water, and that's what kills them. And within 10 minutes, they're sorted by size. You see that's the picture on the left. And they're run through the system, flash frozen. So literally within 10 to 15 minutes of being harvested, they are frozen and ready for sale. They are now selling retail, and it's been a few years working with them, but it's just an amazing operation. Their production is exceeding what they anticipated. And if you go on Planet Shrimp website, you'll get a better overview of what's happening there.
Jack, maybe you could take just a second to talk about when they first came in, the type of collaboration you mentioned before, but I think it's a really nice story. And then the kind of sort of international attention that's coming to Aylmer from this kind of an operation.
Yeah, in the beginning, you know, we talked with them. They wanted a different part of the building. Then they decided they were going to go to Coburg. A month later, I just sent Marvin a note on a Saturday. He said, my wife wants to know when we get wholesale shrimp. And he sent me a note. He said, our lease isn't working out. We'd like to come back. Because we had spent several months researching international technology on shrimp growing. And we helped him write his business plan and do a lot of that research. So when he came back within a week, he knew better what he needed, and we were able to sign an agreement. All those walls you see up are a salt-resistant metal material. So we invested a healthy amount of money to build out the building for them so that they didn't have to have that capital go into the build out. It was a ratio, but the risk for us, you know, it was a risk. Will they succeed or not? If they didn't, we had a food grade massive. This was phase one was 65,000 square feet. So that working with them on those types of things, helping them solve problems, figure out how to pull this all together. It's been quite a story. Like, they literally are the highest density clean shrimp producer in the world. They filter about 10 million gallons a day of water. There's no chemicals in the water. Lots of oxygen, light levels. I think they play Christian music just to keep the shrimp peaceful. So it's always lots of fun. You can buy retail there now. If you're in the area, just drop in and tell them Jack sent you and you'll get a discount. So next one. Yeah, those shrimp go in the size like of an eyelash, and they come out in 28 weeks at that size, and they taste awesome. They've had blind chef competitions. Shrimp from Aylmer's gone to Ottawa for feeding the royal family when they were in Ottawa. Okay, we'll keep moving. Is there any other, like, we just drop that now and let the others speak and then we do the question and answers? Is that how we'll work this?
We've got some time for questions, so if anybody has any questions for Jack, we can have them now either in the chat or chime in live. Maybe Jack, tell us about the supports that you have for new businesses coming in, because you do provide so many supports and coaching for new businesses.
Yeah, we were able to bring the Ogden Business Resource Center into our facility. And basically what we have been trying to do is coach startup businesses. And sometimes if they're having a tough time, we meet with them and we help develop business strategies, marketing strategies. We hold them to monthly accountability meetings and just help take them to the next level. We've had food production inspectors come, and sometimes that intimidates some of the clients. So we sit on the meetings with them. We take the notes. We do the summary meeting afterwards just to help reduce the stress levels for them and let them know these are regulations, but they're not unreasonable and they are attainable. So doing those kind of things, the reduced rental at the startup really helps small businesses start, because that's the cash crunch, right? It was right at the beginning. So if we're willing to invest, help, and if they succeed, we succeed. And we do have a lot of on our team, well-experienced individuals that we can help. And then we bring Kate in and others to help as well.
Great. And we have two questions from the chat. First from Russ is, what was your background before setting out on this adventure?
I've been self-employed in construction since I was 18 years old. So I came to from Saskatchewan when I was 27. I was always an entrepreneur. I had a paint store, bookstore, construction company, cabinet shop, but I had a road to Damascus experience and just had to go where nobody knew my past and start over again. So I've been in construction in Ontario, commercial. We built the arena in Dorchester, the BMO Centre in London, the indoor soccer complex, built a lot of churches. So that construction background has really helped, understand needs, process flows, health and safety issues, and those kind of things.
Great. And we have a question for Ivan. This is an interesting one. Have the new businesses in the facility been able to spin off or support other new enterprises in the region? For example, have the input needs for the shrimp grow-out facility resulted in new local sources of food for the shrimp, for example?
Yeah, and then there are so many synergies. Like with Planet Shrimp, we're actually working with IGPC still in the brainstorming stage on how to use some of the CO2 to produce algae that works for fish food, because fish food is becoming a tough commodity, quite expensive. It's right across the street. The fabric company made all it's sort of a wall of plastic vinyl to stop the shrimp from jumping out of their tanks. So, they come in, see what the problem is, they solve the problem, bring it down the hallway and install it. We've had the same synergies with the different welding companies. Yeah, so there's one other synergy is the marijuana company across the street. They came in and we helped them in their startup, connected them with other people with the same interest. Weed MD now is one of the bigger marijuana companies in the province for sure. So you got marijuana and shrimp, and there's just another synergy that works well.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Jack. We really appreciate that. And if you do think of other questions for Jack, we can circle back after we have the other speakers. Thanks,
Sure.
Jack.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, and up next we have Mike Farrell from the Prince Edward County Food Hub. Thanks so much for your time today, Mike.
No problem at all. Happy to be here. Great to hear your successful venture there, Jack. We're a little smaller at the start end of the grassroots end of it, so we'll definitely be doing from the polls on this webinar. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Do you want me to get going on this? I'm just going to share something here. I'm trying to see where's there we go. Boom. I'm going to go, hold on. There we go. There you go. Here we are. Can everyone see this? Yes?
Country Food Hub.
That's right. Yes. Okay. So, thanks again for making me be part of this, Ryan and Kate. Wonderful to meet you. We know our economic development team here very well in Prince Edward County, and I know all the good work that you guys do every day. So it's what an interesting job. I'm Mike Farrell, and I'm now wearing the hat for this webinar. I'm the chair of the federally incorporated not-for-profit, which is the Prince Edward County Food Hub. And I'll sort of walk you through where we're at. We're just about to launch, so we're at a different page. We're just starting, and we've been successful in saving the school and getting things happening. So I'll tell you guys everything about that, and happy to take questions and all that later. So we are situated in Prince Edward County. I'm sure you are kind of aware of where Prince Edward County is, but just in case you're not, we're that little island, that's close to Kingston on the approaching the east and mellower side of Lake Ontario. And where I am calling from right now is Sophiasburg, which is the most northern east ward of Prince Edward County. I'll tell you a bit about that. What happened here is back when the Earth was cooling, 2016, and I'm sure this you remember all the news here in Ontario. It was kind of national too. That there was a number of something like 500 or 600 schools, public schools in Ontario alone, that were under threat of being closed. Mostly rural, mostly because of under-enrollment and the impacts for kids in terms of way longer extended busing routes, not being able to learn in place. It was something that I myself and a couple other parents here got substantially involved with and figured out what the heck we can do here. We were those concerned groups of parents that got involved, and we started engaging the community leaders, worked with the local leaders, and we listened and we learned. And what we ended up doing was we very quickly realized that moaning and complaining is really not going to get us anywhere, and we need to have a plan to stave off at least the execution. As one of our key early supporters, a guy by the name of Dr. Charles Pascal, the former Deputy Education Minister of Ontario, happens to live in the area, understood sort of what was happening here and got us involved with the idea of hubs and how Queen's Park at the time, Kathleen Wynne's government, was interested in hubs. the idea of taking then usually delinquent buildings, unused buildings that are somehow part of a community, usually public buildings, and then how to reinvigorate them. We said, great idea, but we want to keep our school open, so what can we do? And we focused pretty quickly on some underutilized space in the school as a solution. And what the solution did is it directly addressed a great food opportunity here in the county. And as many of you may know, who may be chiming in from rural areas here in Ontario, I mean, really, what's happened, I was on a discussion coming in from Toronto. I was on in my other hat, I'm a marketer and was doing a lot of work there, coming back on the train, talking to a forester at a tweet, and we were just talking how really since the internet, rural Ontario, rural Canada, rural world really has changed significantly, and things are not just about two different worlds, and there's this whole influx of cosmopolitan and country that's happening. I think there's some really great things that are happening. We have a great agri-food heritage here in the area, but really what's happening out here in particular is we're in the middle of what we like to call a rural renaissance, agricultural innovation, value-added food at its heart, and big tourist business, lots of great catering businesses happening out here, lots of exportable, at least provincially and nationally, value-added foods, kombucha, marijuana-based gummy bears, sauerkraut, sauces, you name it. It's all happening here. And very quickly we figured out that there's a vacuum in the market. There's not a shared commercial kitchen. There's not that much support here for especially those groups that may want to move from their basement to out to a market stand, from the market stand to a farmer's stand, from a farmer's stand to Sobeys, and so on and so forth. And we thought maybe there's an opportunity here. And the opportunity that we understood is that there was a big vacuum out here. And the opportunity that we're trying to service here is to provide a space, commercial kitchen, shared commercial kitchen, agri-food space in the county for local food businesses to ramp up their production and move, as I was saying, from farmers markets to the grocery store and become a growing and integral part of the developing economy and be a part of that, sort of as a vendor and a supporter for that. Also, we, as many of you who may be chiming in from rural Ontario will know, food security is an issue, and it's not just based around poverty, it's also about transport and all those other things. We have a need out here in Hastings, Prince Edward County for that. So we thought we could also become a local food security organization hub, stable home for their food prep, distribution needs, and start to become a clearing ground and area for supporting that. And this is something that really helped us out, especially since we're here to save a school, provide experiential learning opportunities for our students, health and nutrition, growing, cultivation, food prep, business, help chart a path that can lead to a sustainable adult life in the county. And then, of course, around the idea of training, we have a very big service industry here that's seasonal. And one of the major issues they have economically here is they don't have that many trained service people to get involved with that. And we have accommodation issues just like everybody else, but that's a separate story. And we'd like to be part of that too. And we got some interesting innovations and partnerships in the formation with Hastings Prince Edward Public Health and the district school board here, who have been very supportive of ideas like that. So this is just a little map of what we have. This is a wing of the school. We're sort of like a C, and this is the wing of the school that we identified by working with the school administration here, where they're saying, yeah, this school is kind of made for 250, 300 kids. We were at that point at 120, very in the red zone, and in terms of enrollment, and we were going to be axed if we didn't do something. But if you take an area and sort of take that proportion off and find a way to pay for a lease, we kind of figured out with the board that if we can pay a going rate for the lease that the board does for any occupancy of any of their schools for different reasons, we would basically mitigate the hard costs of keeping the school on. The salaries float around the board, and that's not our concern. But if we covered that, that would suddenly put us in good light and make a valuable business case to keep this going, have the kids still operate and do all their learning in the other half of and the other 2/3 of the school, and we take over this wing. And this is just a look at what our current plan is and what's having been built out right now. We have a shared commercial area. Shared commercial kitchen is going to be in the yellow area. Actually, no, in the orange area hallway. We have a food storage area that's already getting ready. We're just waiting on equipment right now. And then the blue and these two other yellow areas are going to become business incubation units for businesses out here in the region that are not just getting off the ground, might be 1 or 2 years in. They're trying to amp up, maybe get distributed on a provincial level. They're looking for a home. They're still probably operating out of their backyard or had some funding to put up a shack, you know, on their property somewhere. And it's time to grow, and we're here to help them out with that. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. Just gives you a sense. Fully loadable, pallet friendly, all of those good things that everybody needs for a small little venture like this. So it's 5,800 square feet compared to the 65,000 square feet that just the shrimp folk over at Jack's place are doing. And this was a working plan. The idea behind this is commercial kitchen rentals. We're going to accommodate small and medium-sized food processors, and the user base is large out here. There's value-added food businesses for sure. There's agricultural businesses who actually sometimes need a place to actually get their produce prepared to service the value-added food businesses, and there's usually a vendor step there that we could take in. Caterers out here, we are now the second largest destination for weddings in Ontario, rivaled only by Niagara Falls, and we're sort of fighting for that right now. Lots of weddings, lots of catering, lots of events, lots of money, and even the most established restaurateurs out here usually need an outpost. So our shared commercial kitchen is going to be super high grade. We're getting all the equipment that these people need, and that's a place that they can set up and prep for their businesses. Food truck operators are busy out here, of course, seasonally. Bakers, food security organizations, you and your neighbor down the road as well. We've had approaches from people that are going to come by and do canning bees. And, you know, if they have the cash together to rent out our shared commercial kitchen for $240 a day, they're in. So this is just the idea that we have happening there in terms of commercial kitchen rentals. We also are going to be working with our agri-food business residents. I told you a bit about what we're doing with them. The idea is that we're going to be giving them a place to live and operate their business that's close to the major highway here, so there's access for distribution, et cetera. But it would also include some sort of regular access to the shared commercial kitchen. We're just working that out right now with a lease that's in the making for a soda company that's planning to move in here or investigating moving in here. And we're slowly working out some interesting relationships with the local CFDC, economic development, municipalities, and some private interest to understand the type of business support that we can provide for these businesses that come in here. And that could be mentorship, established investment potential, working with Mars Discovery District and giving them those types of opportunities. And we're really just in baby steps there. But that's the vision that we have. And we already are going to be getting on board for a business accelerator program here in the whole region. That should be up and running. 2019, we'll be doing a whole Dragon's Den type thing and have $25,000 to go to a business that wins, and be great PR and thought leadership for us. And they get to stay with us, and they get a whole batch of services, et cetera, to grow their business. And,
Mike, we've had a question come up from another Mike.
Right.
How will you approach maintaining standards, so cleanliness, health and safety, safe food handling, and net awareness with multiple business partners sharing the space?
Yeah, you just like Jack or anybody else, you have to have good manufacturing practices in place. Before, after cleanliness, health audit checks, and obviously we're going to be regularly audited by the public health authority here, who are just in and checking out what we have, and then once we get all the equipment in, coming back in to check it in, and that's all going to be part of the. That's also part of. We also will have practices in place for our shared commercial kitchen renters, of course, that they have to leave the place as it was, and we come and inspect, and all of those good things. Great. And also just there are some things that we can't do. So for instance, we're not going to become a meat processing area. There's right now the health standards around abattoirs are a big issue, so we're not touching meat, for instance. And since we're in a school board, we can't do marijuana and alcohol yet.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I won't bore you with too much in terms of the other areas, but we some other aspects of our business model. Our storage rental space, we'll be renting that out. You know, we got freezers, we have fridges, we have storage that's always going to be available for your daily people that are coming in. But also, there's going to be the storage for businesses that are regular users, and they can rent from us at a modicum price. And that's kind of the model that OAFVC does, the Ontario Agri-Food Venture Center, much larger operation around an hour down the road in Colborne. And then finally, we're going to be a teaching training facility, and we're working on some really interesting things over there. Yeah, and so that was the idea, and people really liked the idea. So very quickly, we convinced the trustees of the school board, not the board, the administration. The board wasn't really interested in any of these new ideas, as boards quite often are. They're very reticent and risk adverse. But the trustees were the power behind that, and we worked them, and we worked the community, and we worked press. And long story short, we got this message out and created a lot of community support and generated closing in on $650,000, $700,000 raised by our group in 8 months just to get the capital improvements up, or to support the capital improvements, to support our engineering. We had to change out some of the water supply, and of course the equipment for the shared commercial, plus a year of operational funding. I'd like to point out here too, something we're very proud of is, of course, we relied well on governmental grants from all sectors of government, 30%. But I think the thing that gets me most proud is that 70% of the support of this just came from local private donors, organizations, and businesses supporting what we're doing here in the county. And of course, we had big fundraisers. Here's an example of a big fundraiser we did at Parsons, a big brewery here. Big fundraiser in the fields thing with 200 or 300 people that showed up, each putting up $75 bucks a pop, just to enjoy all the amazing food that's out there and sort of be immersed and reminded of how great the opportunity is in this area. And we continue to, we're planning on doing that again this year. So long story short, we got a reprieve for a year to get this money happening from the trustees. We had a deadline, we made it. And as of September of last year, you know, it's official through sheer will, determination, positive community spirit. So Phibsburg Central School was rescued from the jaws of closure and consolidation, said one of our regional newspaper writers here, Jason Parks. And yeah, big supporter of what we did. I think I'm highlighting press here because some of you may be wondering, like, how can we even get things out of here? One thing we very quickly understood was the role of PR and media and local regional media. They can really, they're dying for interesting stories, especially something as innovative and aspirational. So they're on a story like this, like a dog on a bone, and you really just have to hit them with marketing, new ideas that they can talk about. And you know, we had many of them, from, you know, all the kids getting together with their placards at the end, to depositions that we make and bringing in people from the federal and provincial government to trustee meetings to tell them exactly, you know, we mean business here. It was really, really essential. And yeah, there we are. And yeah, so, and we couldn't have done this without all the support from so many different types of people. We had a, you know, the community got behind it. Here's your big, exciting photo of us with the school board, who finally got on board once it became a winning cause, and they've been really very supportive since. The trustees, and of course the county here has been very instrumental in supporting us from the start, with help from the CFTC and OMAFRA, et cetera, have been very, very supportive. So good moment for us, and now we're just getting things happening. We had a big groundbreaking ceremony just back in February. Lots of people attended, mayors, counties, local MPs, et cetera. And of course we serve food there to make people understand. So that's a little glance of the classrooms before. I don't have an after picture yet, but it's looking really sweet, and I'll send some stuff around if people want to take a look at it. Some neat things we're doing right now, just to wrap up. We've got a partnership with a food security organization here, Food to Share. They're really the powerhouse out here. They process thousands and thousands of pounds of donated food every year now to go to food banks, and it's prepared food. So they have big cooking bees twice a week. We're going to be their place for that, and they've got a grant to cover us. So we're starting to get some lease money from them. We're very excited about that. So they're our first kind of ongoing lease tenant, and we're to tick the box off on one of our missions. We also have a partnership in the making with District School Board and Hastings Prince Edward Public Health about bringing enhanced learning for K-8 students right here to the hub. And the idea is we pilot here at our school, but then the idea would be we'll become the entire catchment can come here, and obviously it's a business revenue stream for us, but it's also really a part of outreach and hitting one of our key vision elements, which is getting nutrition and information and food preparation information out to kids before they start going down that path of bad food, and understanding and also giving them a window onto entrepreneurialism that's happening out here. See it, feel it, it's in their school. And maybe, when it's pizza day, they're making their own damn pizza instead of, buying it from some pizza place out in Belleville, all these kind of good things. So we're very excited about that. We're hoping to run that next school year, might be the year after, but, as bureaucracies go, but that's something we're working on right now and excited about. We got a great culinary advisory committee. There's just so many powerhouse chefs out here that are internationally known. They're all interested in what we're doing. We're already working with them to come up with new ideas around business and revenue streams. So we're very excited about that. And then the investment support. In fact, the reason I was sort of coming in just on time for this was before we have lots of investment opportunities here from the private sector who are interested in seeing where they could go with this and how they might be able to partner with us and some of our other granting organizations to sort of come together, and the model there would be we'd get a piece of the action on that. That'd be some equity that we can have. So as a board, I'm always focused on that's for sure. So we're very excited about that. And there's some really already very successful organizations and businesses here, regional, that you can see here in terms of opportunities and examples of businesses that we'd like to start supporting. And where we are right now, we're attracting a lot of interest, and we've got a list of people that are ready to use this when we're up. We're planning to be up come July. We're open for business. There's a lot of, here's some, we have a shortbread company here that's working with the Drake Devonshire, a big hotel out here, and they've got some great opportunities with Metro and Sobeys involved as well. There's a vinegar purveyor here that's planning to use our services, marmalade and jam company, PEC hot sauce, and Jubilee Farms. They need some help with a place that they can that's health certified where they can actually mix their flours. So a whole bunch of different opportunities, and we really haven't even started to begin marketing actively until we get the equipment in and have open houses and things like that. But we're ready to go, and come July, maybe mid-July, we'll be ready to start at least the bricks and mortar aspect of this business, which is really interesting. We're having a big fundraiser in the fields returning in August, so you're all invited. That was an amazing event where, and again, I think I'm pointing this out, not just to toot our own horn or whatever, but it's to talk about all these. If you look at this, poster from last year, we really made an impact. We knew that there's such a great restaurant and culinary community out here, and we braced them. If they're interested, we say, great, can you cook some food for us and be part of this sort of cavalcade of a festival instead of a rock and roll festival? It'll be a chef type festival, and can you do that? And it was a really, really great event. And so for those of you out there trying to start thinking about constructive ways of raising funds, etc., these are some ideas to consider. And you're all invited. Final piece I'd just like to sort of highlight for everybody is like my take on how we did this, and maybe something that could be shared with everybody listening here. I think the most important thing that we did was we engaged the community immediately. We had town halls right away. We, placards went up, flyers in everybody's mailboxes, and we engaged the local and regional media immediately. I can't overstate the impact that something like that has on a grassroots organization, especially in rural Ontario or rural anywhere. It's the regional media that's going to help you out, and might only be read by 10, 20,000 people, but those 10 or 20,000 people pay a lot of attention to whatever's in that paper. And it's amazing all the type of interest we garnered around that, and just creates momentum around the idea. We also identified interested volunteers right off the bat. Sign up, be part of this, and then they became our army, really, as we galvanized excitement around this. And we also, some of these people are now on our board. who really stepped up. And we identified interested local politicians and local influencers and had them get involved with what we're doing. A lot of outreach to make this happen. We also focus on a solution right off the bat versus just trying to hold on to the status quo. I think when you have a challenge like that, and it's like homeostasis moment where you're feeling like you need to either go up or down, you don't want to just hold on to the status quo. It's time to relook at what we're doing. And this is something that was very different for what a school board ever really does. But we were persistent and kept trying to accommodate them to find out how we can make their meet their risk adverse conditions. And we did that. And we kept the solution simple, which was, I'm a marketer, we kept the call to action very simple, which was save a school with a kitchen. And it's a lot more than that, but that concept really resonated out here. We worked on the power brokers at the school board. They're not the administration, they're the trustees, and we were very quick to work with them and did a bit of sort of public thought leadership on that on behalf of that. And one small little aspect of this on sort of the political side here is we have a lot less trustees this voting round that were acclaimed because people started to understand the power of the trustees, the information, the impact that public can have on them and as a trustee. And I thought that was a nice byproduct there of what we're doing already. Queen's Park connections, so some involved locals didn't hurt, but it never really tapped too much money, but definitely got the ball rolling in terms of access, and our local MPP has been very significantly involved from the get-go. We did our research too. We created a business plan. You know, these are things that can be anathema to community organizers or parents or whatever, but we stepped up and did that. We searched for partners always. We're still open, and we kept an open mind. And we returned. Another thing we did is we routinely met as an action group. We met every damn week. We created events for the community to rally around as well, and we made sure the media was always aware and covered everything that we did. And then finally, we engaged what I like to call the positive cultural alchemy that comes from mixing youth and age, heritage and cosmopolitan, no names and big names. That's really, really important. And friction happens, opposites attract. But friction creates new ideas, and that's what we have here. So that's my presentation, my overview of what we're doing here at the County Food Hub, and we are at the starting blocks, ready to go, and we're in our rookie year almost.
Great, thanks so much, Mike. And we've got a couple questions that have come in through the chat. So we have Ivan who says, "This is really inspiring. He worked many years in Newfoundland on food and agriculture and tried to get similar projects underway, but didn't have the population density needed or access to a large metropolitan area."
Yeah.
So the question, if there is whether being relatively close to Toronto is a key to success for such a project. Will many of the products be sold to consumers from outside the community in the region?
Yeah, Prince Edward County, I would say Prince Edward County right now, the Bay Quinte region writ large, has benefited by being within 2.5, 3 hours from two major centers, Montreal and Toronto especially. And what's really driving the tourist economy right now has been, seriously, I think the past 5 or 6 years, Toronto's just suddenly gone, huh? And now everyone's coming here. So that's helped build the value-added food businesses, and there's a bit of a demand that can happen when they come in, but it's also feeding the trend towards farm-to-table foods that's happening across the country and around the world, driven by millennials in particular, and then everyone else has picked up the slack there. So I would say on a large level that's helped us out. In terms of this specific project, it was sure. I think there was some more involved, politically involved, more experienced people, even such as myself. I'm a marketer by trade, been at it for 25 years, based in Toronto. I live here now with my family. I have for 4 years. People like that sort of helped to galvanize and organize where things could go, and also sort of helped to sort of move us out of kind of the status quo. But really, it was a mixture of them working with the old established families and businesses out here. we don't know where we're going to go in terms of, I think a lot of the value-added foods businesses that are starting up and we will be serving, they're absolutely focused regionally, but their goal is for sure to satisfy the GTA market and the Ottawa market. And we're relatively close to those, still 2.5, it's sort of 2.5 either way, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal. So I would say yes and no. Yes, influence of cosmopolitanism close by helps, and the influence of expats like myself within the mix here makes it a little more fertile ground. I would say maybe the cultural terroir of the area is diverse enough that new ideas sort of flourish better. But on a tactical level, no. I would say it was a very, very even, I would say actually, just speaking of a donorship base, it was a much more local established families, businesses that were helping us out with cash or support in kind. And of course, some help from people that were expats or people that have homes here seasonally that wanted to step up.
Great. And we've got lots of feedback coming in on the chat. Hopefully you'll be able to read it after, of people thanking you for sharing your story and how it's inspiring.
Oh, good. Thank you, everybody. It's still kind of inspiring, but man, it's a lot of work.
We have another question here too. What are your thoughts on how other communities might do something similar? What would be, top 3 things that another community would have to do?
Any community, like their top thing? Well, I mean, the one thing I really like, and I think one thing that really caught heat for this idea was the idea that it could be a replicable solution. I think schools being closed down for under enrollment is a challenge that's happening across the country, especially in smaller areas, rural areas. I would say, is there anything are there resources? Is there a building that's half empty that you could walk into and maybe start, that's just sitting there dormant, sort of like what Jack's story was, right? What do I do with $1 million white elephant out there? What do we do with the old post office that people have been trying to make a coffee shop with, that type of thing? I would say figure that out. And if you can find something that's replicable, that would be great. I would look at your area too. Here, our focus was agri-food, just because we're going through this whole renaissance that's happening out here in the region and all eyes on us, et cetera. But I'm thinking, just north of us, there's a community called that Bancroft. That's forestry. And maybe there's a school up there or a church or whatever that could feed that industry. Maybe there's innovations happening around lumber production, vendors that are supporting that production would be an area. So get a sense of what the economy needs, right? And opportunities that exist, and then find some, low cost, no cost kind of place to start it up, and you can get going on that. I would definitely, other than that, identify the local politicians, right? They're dying for these types of causes. The trustees of your school board, if you're working with the school, the local folks who are getting paid a pittance, so they're passionate. They're doing it out of passion to support the community on a council level, on a municipal level. For us, it all started with the municipality right off the hop. And they were very supportive here. And I would say if you have a good idea that can spur economic development and sort of tick off the boxes that municipalities are looking for, well, then you've got an ally. So create an ally and start at the grassroots. Maybe, hey, if you got someone in the feds that can help you, that's great. But I would say start grassroots as much as you can. And I can't overstress the importance of getting involved with, taking your ideas to regional media. So if there's an issue or some place that you think needs some retrofitting and provides an opportunity for economic development in the area, let people know. Letters to the editor, go and talk to them, have them take a look around, galvanize a bit of interest. By the fact it's like a school is going to close. In fact, 4 schools in the area were going to close. The other 3 were closed, and the community saw that was like an insert expletive here moment. And I think drama creates action, right, and urgency. And I think that helped us as well. So if there's not an urgency immediately, but you think there's an opportunity, try to create a sense of urgency right away.
And with that in mind, how far or how close were you to having that school closed?
Oh, when we moved in here 5 years ago with our family, we were asking about it. The thunderclouds were over it already. So, and the enrollment was slowly going down. I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, parents and families aren't going to be coming and joining this community because there's this sort of area, there's this cloud over the school. It was very, yeah, we were on the chopping block. It was going to happen if we didn't come up with a plan. And yeah, so we were very diligent on focusing on that. It would have happened. And yeah, right now it's a reprieve. We've got a 5-year lease, so nothing's going to happen in this area for at least 5 years, unless the enrollment goes down. But luckily, the moment it just sort of gives you an idea of the moment you have you shine a little light, you open that door, everyone else piles in and sees that light, and new ideas come in and people start back. We were at something like around 110, 120 enrollment at a school that could take 250 to 300 when we were on the chopping block. We got this reprieve for a year from the trustees just to work out our business plan, see if we can actually get the money together, and had to hit all these milestones for them. But it was a great moment. That first year, suddenly enrollment popped up and we were like, 130. And this year, I understand, I was just, the reason I had to leave a bit during your presentation, Jack, I'm here at the school right now, hang out in the principal's office, actually. I have a daughter going into JK. They have their kindergarten registration, orientation kind of thing happening down there. I want to see how my daughter's doing. 27 new kids coming in. So it's going to be a big class. A class that used to be, 19 even last year is 27 this year. So I think the fact that people just showed that we care really helped it out.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mike, and sharing your vision. It's been incredible.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we'll maybe circle back to questions after we hear from Peter and Carla. So we have Peter Miller and Carla Leon from the United Church of Canada, and they're going to be talking about the role churches can play in building community. So I'll turn it over to you two.
Awesome. So I'm Carla. I don't know if Peter's actually here, so I think that he gave me a free license to go for it. Hopefully you can all hear me. So I'm Director of Innovation with the United Church of Canada, and I have a background in business, which is kind of an interesting thing to bring into a spiritual organization. And so it's been really interesting to be so concerned about community economic development, people's spiritual well-being, as well as overall well-being, but also having the business background to it. And then Peter Miller, who is my colleague on this specific initiative with Community Innovation Hubs, he actually had 27 years working at CIBC, and then he retired. He started a bunch of businesses since then, and then he just realized that he wanted to make a difference in the world and make a social impact locally. And so we actually launched the Social Innovation Challenge in 2015 together, and since then we've done a bunch of things such as write a book, which is a lot of fun, together, called the Give Back Economy. And most recently, we've been launching Community Innovation Hubs. And that's really working with churches that think of themselves as hubs. So you've probably seen the article of 9,000 churches are closing in the next 10 years. And I know that Rob is on the line from the National Trust, who was part of getting that article and that information out there. Well, the good news is there's probably 9,000 churches, mosques, spiritual buildings that are also thinking of themselves as hubs. So we're kind of going a third might be closing, a third are thinking in this way, and a third still haven't figured it out. And my job as Director of Innovation is help to figure that out. But those 9,000 churches that are trying to become community hubs, what does that look like? And Peter and I have created a network that's supporting churches thinking in this way. So my first question when I'm showing this to you is like, what do you see? Right, and so this is a church. It's actually based on the outside of Windsor, so in Essex County. And inside, this is actually the old sanctuary you're seeing on the left-hand side. It's literally used none of the time. So if you're looking at the space to the left right now, what could you do with this? There's actually 8 offices that could be across the top. beautiful stage, sound system, great acoustics, a wonderful space, great lighting, and yet it's not being used. And so the question of how do we reimagine a space? Well, we actually created a social innovation challenge in the space, and these are just pictures of what it looked like and the diversity and intergenerational side of it, and really what were they thinking. And so what was really great from this is that, yeah, a lot of the things we've already heard from Michael and from Jack happened. We actually had commercial kitchen renters come from this. We actually launched a bunch of social innovation that were in Essex County from this type of work. And so what's really neat is if we have, as United Church of Canada alone, there's 800 churches, 70% of them in rural in Ontario. And imagine if more of them were repurposing and considering themselves to be hubs. So this is just an example of some of the churches that have actually been given some seed funding to start exploring what it looks like to be more innovative in a church setting and how to repurpose. And so it says 170. We've actually funded 350 churches in the last 3 years in starting to reimagine what church can be outside of Sunday, and really imagining, like, well, how do we repurpose and how do we become relevant within the neighborhood, addressing what needs are there, similar to what Jack and Michael, like, start with the needs, start like speaking with the community, and let's figure out what that could look like. So we're pretty excited about all this happening, and there's just been this realignment really of the mutual interest between the community and the church. And so church, I'm using that language, but it could be a mosque, it could be a temple. It's basically any spiritual institution. So even though I work for the United Church of Canada, in terms of the Community Innovation Hub, we're really, it doesn't matter what spiritual practice or understanding someone has. And so what are the opportunities that we're seeing? I mean, number one, provision of physical space. So I don't know when's the last time one of you has been in a church, and don't worry, I'm not judging. I'm not even going to ask. It's okay. And so, but you know, most churches were actually designed as the original community hub. Like when a new town, small town, village was planted, the first thing that was actually built was the church. And in these churches, they had to have kitchens because we like to eat together. Food is important. I mean, Michael did illustrate that for us, how important food really is. And so they all have kitchens. Many have commercial kitchens. In fact, in Wellington, in Prince Edward County, our Wellington United Church has a commercial grade kitchen overlooking Lake Ontario and has actually launched 8 food businesses in a church. So that's kind of cool. Most of our physical space, we actually also have gymnasiums. Did you know, like, if you want to play basketball, we actually have a basketball court or a pickleball court or a badminton court or whatever it is that we're looking. We've actually found out that one church had a bowling alley in the basement. Right? So you never know. We're trying to figure that out right now, actually, to even understand the plethora of what we have to offer, because there is just so much. Programming, I'm going to go through each of these, funding and shared platforms, and social capital. So there's a lot that the church actually can offer when we're reimagining our space. So this is an example. I'm sorry, these ones are all urban, so please ignore. I just had this slide available already. It was really just showing to a bunch of artists, like, consider church space. And so we were just talking to a bunch of artists that we have great acoustics. We have all these wonderful things. We're speaking to the Sports Association of Ontario, and they have 10,000 sports coaches that need venues. So, like, have you ever considered a church? And actually, most of them, for coaches, are only renting school gyms. And especially in some of the more densely populated areas or places, again, where the schools have been closed, what are their alternatives? Well, it's church. So there are a lot more amenities than you might expect in some of these facilities because, again, they started as a hub. The other thing that you might not expect is what's already happening in these churches. So there are so many existing programs. I would say, like, the average church, and we're actually running a study right now, Faith in the Common Good with the Ontario Nonprofit Network, and I know National Trust is helping, and Toronto United Church Council is all helping to figure out actually how many programs and partners are using church space already. We've done lots of research trying to figure this out, but this picture I'm showing is we have 54 rural camps. We have 3 retreat centers, not to mention 3,000 churches across the country. with the 800 being in Ontario alone. And so there's so many different things, so many different programs, including axe throwing. So who knew you could go to a church and throw an axe? We actually have some churches that have converted their sanctuaries into soft play areas. You would never expect that, or even climbing walls. There's skateboard parks that are actually in church parking lots. Co-working spaces, of course. We actually have 2 breweries that have launched within a church context. So that one's on Vancouver Island, so not Ontario. I'm sorry for that example, but kind of neat that it's still in a rural place. And they're going back to their roots of being a monastery, where monasteries actually paid for all their bills using social enterprise of brewery and baking. So I think that you might be shocked what's happening in churches. The most recent thing that we just funded was actually converting a community garden that was doing well anyway, but they actually turned it into a garlic farm. Because moving from a community garden into a garlic farm actually made it break even. So, but before with the community garden, it was doing okay, it was fine, it wasn't getting as much programming, but with the garlic farm change, they're actually able to make $46,000 annually off of the garlic sale. So it's kind of funny. City of Toronto, so again, I'm sorry that's urban. We have one Unite Church that is running 190 community gardens. I know, right, Kate? So there's lots more happening in churches than you can probably see on the outside. The other thing that's really neat about what we're seeing a lot of our community innovation hubs and like teaching our churches to act like hubs is funding. We already usually have on average 100 donors already as part of the church, and we've really taught them how to give. So Michael talking about people who are giving, often they're people who are going to church regularly and understanding that, and shared platforms. So my best examples here is that a lot of nonprofits actually, instead of starting their own governance structure, they can actually start under the shared platform or umbrella of a church. Even welfare. Welfare started in a church office in Montreal. Welfare started in a church office as a shared platform. So there's lots of nonprofits, youth centers, hospitals, all these things that started as shared platforms under communities of faith. So that's one thing to consider. And literally, I just got asked by someone today to be the shared platform for them. So we're seeing that constantly. And what we're even seeing in terms of being affiliated with a church as a social enterprise or a nonprofit or a new idea, it's actually 5 times more likely to be successful than a normal nonprofit or startup. And the reason being, you already have the space, you already have the volunteers, you already have the donors, and you don't have to worry about all of the governance structures because you can use the shared platform. So imagine that basically gets you from 0 to 100 real quick, as opposed to all getting those ducks in a row. So you can focus on actually making the impact. So the picture here is we actually did a community innovation challenge. They talked to the neighborhood in Essex County. They decided that one thing they wanted to do was a roaming community dinner. And this picture is actually of Harrow United Church running their first community dinner. They did it on a $500 grant we gave them. And they actually had, they sold out. They had 160 people. 1/3 of them were Syrians. So it was around 2017. So during, as the Syrian refugees had come to Canada, 1/3 of them were actually some part of the Portuguese Association. And then the other were just kind of random different people throughout the community. But over half the people in this community dinner that you're seeing the pictures of couldn't speak English. So it's so beautiful that they brought food, they had a potluck, they did this. The Portuguese Association donated some money, and they actually raised $800. So they more than broke even. They didn't even need the $500 grant. So often when you start with the church in terms of like what programs do we need, or the gaps, or the coalition building, you often don't need anything to get it started, which is amazing. Other thing that we bring is just social capital. So like this is a picture of, we had all of our social entrepreneurs who were using co-working space and gathering together regularly to support each other in a church in Markham. And the mayor showed up, and the MP showed up, or the MPP showed up. And so basically when we're having events, we already know everyone. We already know the newspaper writer. We already know CBC. We already know the mayor. And so the social capital typically takes 15 years to create, but working with the church and some of like this repurposing, we actually already have a lot of this. So we're a great partner. So I wanted to kind of start where like the things that we have and how there is common interest, and we're really excited because that was also what was talked about in the case study. Thank you, Ryan. And we're really also excited about what the opportunities to engage. So a lot of times, church they've been more like a charity, and what we're really learning is that partnership is everything, and how to be in relationship. And so what Michael talked about is having the town halls. We call it the community round tables, and we basically invite neighborhoods, community organizers. It could be for-profit, nonprofit, other faith groups, and what can we do better together is really the big question. So in terms of the community hubs, we help with the mindset shift, and then they start figuring out partnerships to come up with ways forward. So that's why we'd love any partnership with any of these types of people. The Community Innovation Hub or Challenge was a thing that we did in partnership with WeTech and the University of Windsor and St. Clair College all participated, as well as the foundation. And this is where they came up with that Harrow United Church community dinner idea. But it was just neat that we were able to brainstorm that. And this event cost literally less than $500 to run. And we did it in like 3 weeks. Yeah.
Sorry, we've had a question come up. How do you go about inviting people to these town halls?
Yeah, so it actually goes back to the previous thing with social capital. If the average congregation has 100 people, let's say, the average congregational member knows 300 people. And typically the person who goes to church, has whatever spiritual practice, they also actually volunteer at other nonprofits. So typically on the board is someone who actually goes to church. On like the person who shows up every single week to volunteer and be the leader of a nonprofit is probably also someone who goes to church somewhere. Like often, we just find that there's a lot of synergies between that, and it's an indicator that they probably get more involved in the community. So the problem is that they are very quiet about it. So they don't often advertise it and they don't talk about it. I mean, they might even be concerned that they're going to be viewed as converting people. So they don't want to do that. So they often won't talk about the fact that they go to church whenever they go, or what their faith is. And yet when they finally realize, like the presentation I'm doing right now, and the fact that the church could be a hub again, and really we have all the assets, we just have to reimagine it. Most of the time we don't have to do too much repurposing. It's often just reimagining it and inviting people to be part of this. And so as soon as they start realizing that they already know people, it becomes really, really easy. I have a great example is one minister, he's been running a book club, and the director of social innovation for the Ministry of Immigration and Refugees is on his book club in Ottawa. And I found this out, and I was like, the director of social innovation for immigration, like they should be talking to the United Church. Because in terms of the new, like for Syrian refugees, over 50% of the privately sponsored refugees were through denominations and through communities of faith as a shared platform.
Does he have our book? Does he have our book?
Yeah, I already talked about our book, Peter. But that's kind of interesting, right? And so he actually had a meeting with me, and we're in ongoing conversations because we already know people. Like our social capital, we've been in most communities for hundreds of years already. And that's important in rural. I know this.
And a follow-up to that one, Carla, was how do you make sure that more of the community voices that are often marginalized are included?
Yeah, so absolutely. Actually, so I can share with everybody, if you'd like, our community roundtable turnkey kit. So we offer coaching and training and all best practices with churches of how to go about starting these conversations. And in terms of the agenda and understanding who you're inviting, we're very clear about who to invite, which is everyone. And on the other side is one of the questions of the first roundtable, because we know that one roundtable is not enough. We know that change happens at the speed of trust and relationships, so they have to be ongoing, right? So it's like every 3 months or 6 months is what we recommend to build the coalition. But the first gathering, they always ask, who is not at the table? Who is not here? So that can be rectified right away.
And Carla, I would invite you and folks to visit our website. We can certainly share where we're going to be posting this webinar, as well as the case studies. We can share some of those additional resources to facilitate that as well. And you can also check out their website as well. Maybe Peter, you could include that in the chat box.
Great, thank you. So what we also have been seeing is lots of workshops. This picture here is actually a legal clinic for new immigrants. So this church actually got funded to hire a immigration lawyer to come and run these workshops regularly. And on average, they had 70 people show up who were actually worried about like their immigration status and being supported. So like in terms of some of these community innovation hubs and thinking in this way, there's some really neat things, again, that you would not expect. And again, like this is just a gathering place, and that really is what a churches were originally designed to be. Sorry, did I see another question, or should I keep going? Keep going? Okay. Okay, so what's next then is, so I talked about, you know, what does the church have to offer? What does the community have to offer, and how there's lots of partnerships. And here's some of the outcomes we're seeing now. This is actually a picture. I was in Kingston this last weekend, and I took a picture of this sanctuary that was actually converted into co-working space. So it's pretty interesting. And so it's actually called Sanctuary Co-working. This is still not owned by a church at this point. It was sold. But this used to be a United Church that someone has turned into a co-working space. So, I mean, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, but things like this is possible. In terms of the Community Innovation Hub, we've actually built a partnership with a co-working space called The Hive. And so The Hive is actually going to be coaching any of the churches that want to create co-working space how to do this and the best practices, because she's converted an old schoolhouse into a co-working space, so a similar space in doing this. Social enterprise is other things that we're seeing. This is an example of Raw Carrot, which hires people on ODSP. It's based out of Paris, Ontario. It's a pretty small little place, rural, definitely. And what's neat about them is that they're now doing social franchising. So it started in a Presbyterian church. We actually were their first funder as the United Church of Canada. They've created this social enterprise, and then they ended up speaking to some other denominations. They have now launched in a Mennonite church, and they've launched in Mount Forest United Church, which is about 20, 30 minutes north of Guelph. And so the social enterprise, social replication model is happening here, and they've hired now over 20 people and continue to grow. The agrihood is another thing that we're seeing. A lot of churches, part of the United Church Creed, so our mission is Mother Earth, and we actually have a commitment to reducing our carbon footprint by 80% by 2050. So a lot of our community innovation hubs, we're encouraging to think about the environment. I mentioned the community gardens and the 190 that one's running. We're seeing the garlic farm is another example, but we're also seeing hydroponics actually. So this is a church in Westmount in Quebec, where they actually have hydroponics within the church, and we're seeing that more and more. So there's interesting ways to go about in terms of agrihood and training. Many of our churches have soup kitchens, but now they're also creating that food programming that Michael was talking about as well. And again, we have a partner in terms of agrihood, so any church that wants to do this, we have a turnkey kit for that as well as coaching. So we're really trying to scale this up and be supportive as a network. Another example is newcomer centers. So we're seeing that, especially as we have new immigrants that aren't all able to be in urban centers and definitely wanting to go to rural centers and as well. Well, sometimes the church is actually the newcomer center because they haven't had them in some of these places before. This is an example of a place just outside of Edmonton, so in more suburbia, Alberta, but they have a couple thousand Rwandan refugees from like 6 years ago. And so they actually converted the church into a newcomer center. We're actually seeing the same thing in the church on the outskirts of Montreal again right now, who's actually converting the back 25% of the sanctuary is being separated to become a Nigerian refugee center. So pretty cool things, and many others. So we have a partner for maker spaces, obviously becoming a community hub, just reframing what we already probably have been. In fact, we have a church in Ravenhurst, Shelburne, and Primrose, Ontario, all doing massive renovations right now of over $1 million to convert their churches into hubs. And other things that we're just worried about in general with Community Innovation Hub, shared platforms we talked about, incubators, and we have this really neat thing coming out of, unfortunately, Toronto. It's out of High Park area. But what they've done is they've actually created a platform where business owners locally, which I think would be great for rural, can actually donate in-kind services like a haircut or like even a childcare space or dinner for 2 or 4 or whatever it is. And they'll actually create this platform online to create vouchers to then, for the ministers, for the priests, and for social workers to actually provide these vouchers to people who are on the edge, who are marginalized in some way, but may not necessarily be below the poverty line and being given other supports, but people who can afford more. So that kind of matching process of like, in our neighborhood, there is enough, and how do we do that? So we've granted them on scaling that model up, and we're really excited as they start scaling that into other neighborhoods, which they're now doing. So just to wrap it up, like we're continuing to look for partners. And so this is an example of one of our partnerships. This is another hat I have. I'm actually the founder of Small Business Solvers. So all of the churches across the United Church of Canada, we actually do business coaching for them using Small Business Solver, which is like an online e-coaching platform. And then in all of these incubators and community hubs, and when social entrepreneurs are being encouraged within some of these spaces, we're also providing them with this online e-coaching support, which has been helping them to grow. So that's
Carla,
a lot. And now Peter
Carla,
can tell me what I forgot.
Carla, I think it's important that when you talk about small business solver, that you talk about the fee.
Okay, thanks, Peter. So, and the reason Peter says that is that Small Business Solver is very much designed for rural locations because we've made it pay what you can, so that we believe that having access to coaching and business support and business help is a social justice issue. So Small Business Solver has been designed to be accessible fully for anyone who does need help in scaling up their business and making better business decisions.
No, but what it costs to get the service, that's what I was getting at, Carla. Pay
free.
What you can.
Yeah. I'm sure there's lots of questions because I just covered a lot of stuff, but I think what we wanted to really frame up is that we're repurposing our churches. About a third of them are thinking in this way, so you probably have a church in your neighborhood and love to help in connecting them.
Okay, Carla, we have a couple questions here. So does the United Church always remain in ownership or management of these buildings?
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't always happen. So the example of the co-working space, it didn't happen in that. At the same time, we're seeing that for longevity, it typically does make sense for us to continue to keep it with the United Church of Canada. We already have the charitable status. We also have, it is tax-free locations, so it is helpful in that way. And you already have the social capital of usually 100+ people. So there's already so much in place for that to make sense. We've actually just created development corporation to help with renovations and redevelopment of some of these places that is going to be wholly owned by the United Church of Canada. So in terms of overall real estate, creating funding models for that, those are things that we are working on right now so that we can do this well and make sure that this space is still for the community.
Fantastic. We have another question here too. There's a bit of a preamble, so I'll maybe leave that for you to review, but it says, in the case of other denominations and religions, is there a different level of encouragement for these new uses for facilities?
Sorry, can you just recap that one more time? I was trying to do the preamble.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, are there, I guess, in the case of other denominations or religions, is there a different level of encouragement for these new uses for facilities?
I think so. The big challenge for churches in thinking in this way is their mindset. And so depending on where people are at, their mindset's going to be different. So our role within the United Church of Canada is actually not just to help our denomination. We actually believe that it's important for all denominations to be thinking in this way and repurposing. So literally yesterday, I spoke to 2 different denominations at their senior level, trying to support them in how do we change that mindset collectively. And as the United Church of Canada, we've created a lot of documentation, a lot of tools to help others make this paradigm shift with us. For many reasons, that's going to be really important. So for us, we think that we're pretty sure we're at the edge. That's actually the name of the division that I work for. It's called The Edge. It's not an acronym. We're just the edge of the edge. But that doesn't mean that we want to be out further in front of everyone. We do want to bring everyone along with us. In terms of mosques in Canada are still acting 150% as community hubs, but often they are mostly for people of that specific space. But they are acting fully as a community hub, and I think there's lots to learn from how they do that.
Great. Great, and it looks like all of the questions in the chat for the time being. So thank you so much, Carla. I really, really appreciate your time. It's been incredible and great way to share. Now, Ryan, I think we'll open it up in the chat for any questions for any of our speakers today.
Yeah, I would invite anyone who wants to join in and ask some other questions, maybe some broader questions for the folks on the line about the work that they've done. Maybe I can just offer a few quick remarks from my perspective. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. I think fundamentally what we've seen here is people drawing new connections and reimagining the way that spaces can be used. I think the story is of how we can create opportunities for new entrepreneurs, but it really is at the end of the day community development stories that are happening. So really inspiring to see, and I appreciate that. Kate, I would turn it back to you though if you had some questions, some broader questions for the 3 folks on the line.
So I have some cheat sheet questions here. Let's see, I think I like this one here. Why is physical space so important to entrepreneurs? And how is your space offering that void that they need? Or filling that void, I guess.
Well, a lot of people, like we've run our business out of our home for 29 years, and now that's expanding. It's a real discipline to learn how to work out of your home and not have work totally take over your life. The shared spaces that Carla was talking about, we're working on that. It's that community involvement. Like people sometimes just need to get out, be around other entrepreneurs, build on each other, support each other, sort of like what this phone call is doing, this webinar, sorry. It's exposing people to ideas, to other, so you don't feel maybe I'm not quite as crazy as I thought I was, or most people think I am. So it's that supportive community, and that's really a big part of doing what doing. And if you can run a business, you need space. If you do it in your home, it slowly takes over your home. Like I've probably worked more hours than anybody I know, but still spent more time with my family than anybody I know. I'd always be home for dinner. So that's my 2 cents worth on that one.
I'd agree. Like I'm going to use funny language with you, but we would say it's very lonely to start your own company. And so, and our laugh is we say that starting your own business is one of the biggest leaps of faith you can take.
Yeah.
And so for us, the loneliness piece is really important of how, when we're having spiritual and social entrepreneurs starting things, how do they create community together? And I really love what Jack was talking about of those two competitors working together. We see that a lot. I think my favorite part that Peter was running within one of our hubs in Markham was the mastermind. And it would be like 10, 15 entrepreneurs locally who just gathered every 2 weeks. And they would say, here's the problem that's bothering me right now. This is what's keeping me up at night. And it was really interesting that every single one in the room had something to offer. So maybe it was someone who had just started their business, but they really understood social media. So it was really like relationship building and supportive, and then also confidence building that everyone had something to offer.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add other than, I agree completely. It's about human connection. And you can see it happening now. Co-working spaces there's a new co-working space opening up here in Prince Edward County. It's mostly sort of expat, cosmopolitan people as well as locals who are working out of their homes, and you can do that. And so that's where innovation gets bred, and that's where the loneliness gets banished. I would also say when you come down to in terms of just starting out an interesting innovation like this, it also presents a physical space that's either derelict or underutilized, presents a financial opportunity. At least you can probably get it low cost, no cost, and that is about retrofitting it up or whatever. So there's an opportunity there, I think, that can be present. If there's that white elephant that's been sitting there forever and you have a great idea on it, people will get behind that idea. People don't like seeing things lie dormant.
Thanks for that, Mike. And I would add to that as well. One of the reasons we were excited about this call was that there's folks from across Ontario, and there's countless buildings, there's arenas, there are churches and schools and industrial spaces, but there's arenas and there's vacant downtown business fronts, and there are many different types of spaces that people can look at with a new lens. And I think that all of our presenters today, that is something that rings true for everyone, that they saw something in a underused or vacant building, that they saw something in that they could turn into something that adds value for their community. So I hope folks hearing these stories can take away some inspiration.
One thing I will add there, just Ryan too, is it calls to mind here. We talked about the 3 other schools in the region that were closed, and I'll say 2 of them right now are one of them's already been bought by the county, supported by a local Christian or church here, and it's going to be turned into. They're trying to raise the money to turn it into a to reuse it as a accommodations for seniors in the area. So and accommodation is a very big issue across rural Ontario everywhere, and so even when there's a loss, it can turn into something else.
Mm-hmm. And we've got another question here in the chat. It says, I wondered how work that folks are doing allows for those who might not be able to afford the startup costs be able to engage. So is there an opportunity for people who can't afford startup costs to engage with your organization?
Well, from my end, who was this for? Was this for Carla or anybody?
Anyone, open question.
Oh, open question, yay. Thanks, Carla, way to point. But yeah, I mean, from our perspective, that's the whole idea. Our shared commercial kitchen is to move people who are just, to give them that opportunity to get out of their kitchen, to maybe let them know that there's a resource that they can go to. And absolutely, the reason they're going to be coming to us a lot is that they don't have the startup capital to create to have a kick-ass kitchen, and they don't have the connections or whatever to at least tenable right now, and will ideally make it tenable for that type of resource allocation and resource support and just business strategy and minds coming together to go, you want to do this, well, here's a suggestion of how not to do it, here's a suggestion how to do it, access, government grants, who knows, like for sure. So we're predicated largely on that, the idea of filling a void, and we'll take the startup capital, hold and ideally, hopefully, spread that out to the community.
I would.
Let me add to that if I could.
Yeah,
I've worked with 720 startups over the years, and I would put money down about 7 or 8 in terms of priority, in terms of starting a business. Number one is building a team of volunteer advisors who can help you with that. And then with getting those advisors, then you build some partnerships. And from all of those contacts, you're able to look at different sources of financing that can help make it happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with Peter. Having the vision and the courage to take the step, like don't give up because you hit barriers. Get connected, do your research, talk to people like Kate, and there's services out there that will be able to link you to people that will help your vision come together. Don't give up. Go for it. Makes life fun, enjoyable. Having everything that's just in a box is maybe feels safe, but I love the risk takers. Go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to pop in on this question as well in terms of how are we making sure that this is accessible. I think why we have the Community Innovation Hub network that we're trying to support churches in thinking this way is some of the best practices. So we've actually gotten an MOU from a church down in Texas where they've actually figured out how to have rental agreements with nonprofits based on their cash flows. And so that's really interesting to understand, okay, so with granting cycles and fundraising cycles and things like that, how is that a match? And so we're taking learnings internationally. Actually, we have a partner in the UK as well for us to learn what's working elsewhere and seeing how we can bring it to the Canadian context, and then educate and share those learnings with our churches so that we can continue to make sure that it is accessible for everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Carla. And it looks like we've wrapped up with all the questions today, so we might get out of here a little bit early. I'd like to thank each and every one of you, the 4 of you, for participating today. I think it's incredible when we have somebody like Jack, who's a private entrepreneur, then we move into Mike, who's the not-for-profit entity, and then we have Carla and Peter with the church. At the end of the day, though, no matter if you're private, not-for-profit, or a church, it's all about community and bringing those connections together and really making sure we're all working together for the betterment. So thank you so much for the inspiration. It's been a great session, and I will send it back to Ryan for wrap up and talk about the next great webinar that he's going to be hosting. Maybe.
Kate, and I appreciate you joining in and offering some of your expertise as an economic development officer and a community builder yourself. I really have nothing else to add. It's been a fantastic session. It's really inspiring to see how people are rethinking things and building community, taking that leap of faith, no matter where you're coming from, I think is incredible. I did want to add for folks who are on the line, we do have another webinar coming up next week. It's the third installment of these webinars, third of 4. Next week, we're looking at ecosystem building. So something that is very similar to the types of conversations we're having here today. But what are some of the other necessary things that are in a community that create a supportive environment for entrepreneurs? Certainly, looking at geography and across rural Ontario, sometimes there are definite challenges with either market or population density or some of these sites for people to come together. So we're going to be hearing from Paul Nickel from the CFDC, Mark Hanley, who's an enterprise facilitator out of Hastings County, and Mary Doyle with her group, Rural on Purpose, looking at all the different things we can do in rural Ontario to create a supportive environment. So that is coming up next week, June 12th, same time from 10 to 12. So please join us on the line for that. If you need any additional information, please reach out to myself and I can connect you. So thanks again to our participants who put in all the time to out of their busy schedules, and thanks to everyone on the line as well for joining in. And I would invite you to come again next week with some of your own stories of what you're doing in your community. So thanks very much, and we can stop now, and everyone has time to get to lunch. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
If anybody's in the Aylmer area and wants a tour of our building, just send us a note on our website and we'll arrange it.
On a second, I highly recommend going for the golf cart tour with Jack. It's incredible.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Great, thanks.